The Ten Commandments are listed in Exodus chapter 20 and in Deuteronomy chapter 5. Various theological traditions enumerate the commandments differently, but in these lessons we will follow the traditional Protestant numbering. The Ten Commandments may be summarized as follows. Commandment 1, you shall have no other gods before me. Commandment 2, you shall not make for yourself an idol. Commandment 3, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Commandment 4, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Commandment 5, honor your father and your mother. Commandment 6, you shall not murder. Commandment 7, you shall not commit adultery. Commandment 8, you shall not steal. Commandment 9, you shall not give false testimony. Commandment 10, you shall not covet. Although some theologians treat the Ten Commandments as if they were just another portion of the Mosaic Law, the Bible indicates that the Ten Commandments have a special primacy over Scripture's other commandments. The primacy of the Ten Commandments is both historical and theological. Their historical primacy depends on the fact that, to our knowledge, these laws were the first written legal code that was received by the nation of Israel. Paul called special attention to this fact in Galatians chapter 3, verse 17, where he wrote these words, "The law, introduced 430 years later, does not set aside the covenant previously established by God." Paul referred to the giving of the Ten Commandments as the introduction of the law, indicating that this was the first time Israel had possessed God's law in this form. Israel received the Ten Commandments through Moses, who himself received the Ten Commandments directly from God on Mount Sinai. By receiving the Ten Commandments, Israel became the first nation to possess an extensive, supernaturally revealed code of God's holy requirements. Of course, God's people still had many commandments prior to Moses' time. We see very clearly in the flood of Noah's day that God had a number of standards that he expected people to follow. And when the people failed to obey God, he destroyed the whole planet with the floodwaters. Moreover, Abraham was not without laws and stipulations to obey. In Genesis chapter 17, verse 1, God had given him the broad and demanding instruction, "Walk before me and be blameless." Now, the Ten Commandments were not the only laws given to Israel as they camped at the foot of Mount Sinai, but they served as the preliminary and summary statement for a great number of laws that Israel received immediately afterward, while they were still camped at Mount Sinai. These other laws, commonly known as the Book of the Covenant, can be found in Exodus chapters 21 through 23. Together with the Ten Commandments, the Book of the Covenant formed Israel's initial written legal code. Later, this code was expanded to include many other laws. In addition to having a temporal primacy, the Ten Commandments also had theological or ideological primacy. As we read in Exodus chapter 24, verse 12, "The Lord said to Moses, 'Come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and commands I have written for their instruction.'" For one thing, unlike the Book of the Covenant that Moses penned according to God's instructions, God himself wrote the Ten Commandments on stone tablets. Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 10 confirms that God himself carved the Ten Commandments in the stone tablets. There Moses claimed, "The Lord gave me 2 stone tablets, inscribed by the finger of God. By carving the Ten Commandments himself, God demonstrated that the Ten Commandments were special among his laws, that they deserved special attention and notice, and were, in some sense, the most important of his commandments. The theological primacy of the Ten Commandments is also indicated by the special occasion on which Israel received them. The giving of the law was attended by thunder and lightning, smoke, clouds, and heavenly trumpets. During this time, God allowed himself to be viewed not only by Moses, but also by Joshua, Aaron, and the 70 elders of Israel. The Ten Commandments' theological primacy is also emphasized in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 13, where Moses identified the Ten Commandments as God's very covenant with his people. God declared to you his covenant, the Ten Commandments, which he commanded you to follow, and then wrote them on 2 stone tablets.